Okay, everybody, you're starting to think about what you want to do moving forward with your worm colony following our harvest on April 3rd. So, number one, you can bring it back. Number two, you can just go right back into your box bin. And number three, you can try some of these other styles of worm bins that have been developed over the years that are pretty popular and work pretty well. The major thing that people try to engineer is how to separate the worms from the castings somehow, or just make it less time-consuming and messy to do a great big bin harvest, which you're going to see. It takes a bit of commitment. And the item that came up on the market way back when was the stacking tray system. And this is the original stacking tray system called the can of worms. It was developed in Australia. And it works pretty well. Pretty popular with people, and you can find it online. No one here sells them, but Amazon's got them. Anyway, this is the can of worms, and what they've done is they've thought about separating the bed into three sections. So the bottom tray here is just for drainage. So it's just a drainage tray. It has some aeration on the bottom, and it has a little spigot to let the leachate out. And you start by bedding your worms, and once again you can bed in bunny bedding, you can bed in coconut coir, you can rip up cardboard like you're used to, but you're going to do a layer of bedding down here, a few inches thick, and bed down your worms. You'll put your worm colony in there, feed them, put a bit of paper on top, and care for them the same way you do in your box bin for about 2 months. And at that point they will have eaten it down a little bit, and you will take the second one, see plenty pukas, place it on top, put in some fresh bedding, start feeding here, and the worms from below are going to finish up what's down there, and they're going to move up through the pukas to start working the bedding and the food in tray 2. That will take about 2 months. You're now 4 months into it. Then, when that is worked out pretty well, after about 4 months, you'll put on your third tray, fresh bedding, food, little paper, water every day, right? So instead of doing it all at once, we've done 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 2 months ago, and at that point when you're 6 months into it, the stuff on the bottom, the vermicast on the bottom, is pretty much finished. It's been in there for 6 months. So instead of dumping the whole thing out and sorting and separating your worms, this is how you do it. You'll take off these 2 trays, take this tray, put it on top, put the whole thing back, and now you've got some worms in vermicast. I guarantee you there will be worms down there because they like it because it's so moist. The vermicast will be kind of muddy, but you fluff it up with your fingers a little bit, leave the lid off, and you know what's going to happen? I bet you do, because you know that worms are photophobic. They just don't like the light. So if you leave the lid off, those little guys are going to go right down through the same pukas they came up on, disappear back into this middle tray and the bottom tray, and voila! You've got a whole tray of finished vermicast without worms. So what do? You harvest just this one tray with no worms in it. Oh, it's so much easier. And then you fill it with fresh bedding, feed, paper, water. 2 months later, you take this tray, rotate it to the top, and do the same procedure. So in other words, we're just having to deal with 1/3 of the bedding at a time, rather than the whole thing. And the stuff on the bottom has been the stuff that's been in there longest and will probably be the most finished. When you bring it to the top, fluff it up, leave the lid off, the worms will go down, and you remove the vermicast and start again. So this will continually changing your tray. Okay, there's a lot of stacking tray systems on the market. You go to Amazon, you'll see a zillion of them. I recommend that you go to the higher quality units. That would be the can of worms by name, or another product manufactured by the same company called the Worm Cafe. Almost everything else on the internet, honest to God, it's really cheap, but it's also really junk. So stay away from those kind of cheap knockoffs. Go with the original, the Australian product. It is the greatest, the can of worms or the Worm Cafe. I'm not sure what the costs are these days. You'll have to look it up. You can also find them on Craigslist because people do give up their worms and sell their can of worms or their Worm Cafes at a good discount. And they're very durable, they last a long time. So if you want to go for a stacking tray system, that's what you do. And it does make your worm keeping a whole lot easier. And again, this is a pound or two of worms that will be processing somewhere between 5, 8, 10 pounds of food waste a week. Good luck. You'll love the stacking tray.